Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. My voice is a little bit hoarse. I'm not ill, I'm not in pain, but I've just been chatting a lot. I've also been screaming, ranting and raving because of Prince Harry and his behaviour. So you'll have to put up with my voice being a little bit husky or hoarse during this broadcast, my dears. And I might split up this broadcast into two, by the way, so that it can be delivered in bite-sized chunks as opposed to one long diatribe. But it will be a bit of a diatribe because the disgrace, the absolute disgrace, this has gone beyond the pale. And you know what? You can tell me every day that I'm melodramatic, that this is a comedy, drag act, and you might be right every other day. But when it comes to melodrama, I'm afraid I cannot overstate the serious, grave nature of what Prince Harry has done. And I make no apology if I sound melodramatic. It's not melodrama to tell you that what Prince Harry has done in this tome by revealing that he killed 25 Taliban fighters. It's not just put his life in jeopardy, his wife's, his family's, but our king and the rest of the royal family. The king could be killed. The king could be killed. And I don't mean to sound hysterical, to do a Rachel Ragland and take to hysteria and the histrionics, or the Harold Harkle and take to paranoia. But it is that grave and that serious that sort of possibility is being bandied about, not just by the likes of me, but by the highest echelons of society, including those involved with the military. The irresponsible, daft stupidity of Harry has left me speechless for once, absolutely speechless. Everybody in the royal family, from the king all the way through the Wessexes, who are out and about, walking among the people, shaking hands with them. You've seen them so much since the Jubilee, throughout the Queen's death, every day, out and about among the people, getting egged by the crowds, at close quarters with them, all the way through the ranks to Princess Alexandra and the like. It is so unbelievable that these two are the ones that were famed for going on Oprah Winfrey, whinging about their security, how nobody's looking after them, how Harry is so very afraid for his family every day, and how it's a great grievance to him. You couldn't make it up, could you? And he puts out this tome, breaking his oath of allegiance to his commander-in-chief, his comrades, all the rest of it. Truly, what earth is going on? That boy. I want to start with the rather delicious claims, because this did make me love Charles even more. Harry claims on the day that the Queen died that Charles told him not to bring Meghan to Balmoral. You gotta love that. Well done, Charles. Don't bring her to Balmoral, he said. And Harry says that Charles laid out nonsensical and disrespectful reasons. Disrespect? You're going to talk about... Oh, my phone's going. You're going to talk about disrespect, Harold? Are you serious? If you want to know disrespect, look at a repeat of Oprah Winfrey from, was it March 2001, whenever it was, my dear. Look up there and then you'll see disrespect. Chiefly from you for allowing it in the first place, but in close second your wife, who damaged the Queen's reign, and you expect her to get a first row ticket to the Queen's deathbed, or rather the Queen's dead body while she's still warm. Are you absolutely kidding me? You expect her to get a front row seat, just as we hear that she got at Diana's grave, where she tried to channel Diana's energy on the island where Diana's body lies, and feed into her spirit and get guidance. Ugh, it is so repulsive, it's so vulgar. If she was really listening to Diana's guidance, I don't think she'd like what Diana had to say, because Diana would be telling her to get your hand off me, get off my island, and get away from my boy. And that's just not my volition. It's also Paul Burrell's, whether you like him or not. He was saying almost the same thing about Diana today, that she would be absolutely in despair over Harry's behaviour. And many people close to Diana feel that way. Anyway, I digress. Don't ever speak about my wife that way, said Harry. And apparently Charles apologised, which only goes to show how gracious he is, because he'd just been freshly created king at the Queen's last breath, and his first conversation with Harry was Harry telling him not to besmirch his wife. Yes, that was the first conversation that Prince Harry had with the King. The King. The first conversation, defending Meghan. Don't speak about my wife that way. Well, from what I hear, in what way? From what you say, he didn't speak about your wife. He just simply gave you an instruction that she wasn't to come to Balmoral, which was entirely appropriate. Lest we forget, Catherine also didn't attend Balmoral. If it was such protocol for a wife of a blood relative to be there, not the blood relative, but the wife to be there, I can assure you that Catherine would have been there, whether or not she needed to deal with the kiddies and console them in their grief, because that was the reason we were told that she remained in England. But trust me, if it was protocol for the wife of William to be there, or the wife of Harry, she would have been there. But Catherine wasn't there, but that wasn't good enough for Haribo, was it? No. It's all about Meghan. On that day, which was about the Queen and the King becoming king, it all had to be about Meghan. But Charles, the new, freshly appointed king, freshly inherited king, whatever the phrase is, you know, he was the one that had to be grovelling around Harry to try and keep him sweet. I don't know. Harry was vulgar enough to share his final words, because when he got to Balmoral, you know, he'd learned about the Queen's death via the BBC, which is unfortunate and sad, but, you know, it was all a bit of a rush that day, wasn't it? He was greeted there, he says, by the Princess Royal, by Anne, who graciously led Harry to the Queen's room, and he whispered to the Queen that he hoped she was happy. And with grandfather, he admired her for carrying out her duties to the end. If only you'd done the same, Harry. If only you'd done the same. It's all lost on him, isn't it? Your words to her should have been, I'm sorry. I am so desperately sorry. But no. And by the way, a source who knew Elizabeth well has been quoted in the newspapers as saying that they are almost comforted that the Queen wasn't alive to see what her grandson had done. Their Majesty would be devastated. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, my love. Put it in your cigar. He tells us that Prince Charles sent him honey from Highgrove, was it? One of the royal residences. Sent him royal honey, anyway, maybe Balmoral. Sent him some honey and a large box of cigars to smoke while he was doing his military service. Well, put that in your cigar and smoke it, my love. But back to this army business. I cannot believe what Harry has done. He tells us, he reveals that he killed 25 Taliban fighters and that he viewed them, or was trained to view them, as chess pieces in a game. And this isn't about the rights and wrongs of military service. It's about the rights and wrongs of discretion and national security, as well as personal security, because this was utterly immature. Utterly immature. This illustrates for the whole, you know, a lot of people, including some friends of mine, I've got to tell you, some who are on the fence about which side they fell on with regards to the Harkles, for want of a better phrase. Some of them really did find it in their hearts to see Harry and Meghan through a lot more of a sympathetic lens than they had previously after they watched the Netflix propaganda. So it worked. I'm sorry, that spell did cast over a large swathe of people who were undecided about them, and they felt themselves finding a lot more sympathy, a lot more compassion for the Harkles. Even those heartstrings that were played, I'm afraid, after this episode, it seems to be backfiring on Harry, because he's getting blanket criticism for this absolutely... it is a vulgar, tawdry cabaret, isn't it? It can't be dressed up as anything else, because it's all done in the name of money and revenge. Revenge. At least he has the good grace to admit that he sees William as his arch-rival, as he puts it, or what was it? Arch-nemesis. Perhaps they're going to copyright that word as well, then. Archie-well... Archetype, what'll be next? Architect, an arch nemesis. Archie. Maybe that's why it's called Archie, all the rumours, you know, because he can be another arch rival to George for the throne. Well, you know, at least he admits that. And, you know, one could normally give him props for admitting such things if it was to himself, to his therapist, to anyone in a private circle. But you don't really have to go into that kind of detail internationally. We even learn that Harry's circumcised. He even goes to that sort of level. Former Marines have come forward, army colonels, MPs, all criticising this decision to go public with this information, which was not necessary. Anybody could read between the lines. We did not need that detail, and he didn't need to put that. What was he thinking? What was the boy thinking? Former British Army Colonel Richard Kemp said it's a betrayal of the people he fought aside. And it's a betrayal on so many levels. And remember, security services and intelligence have said over the past year that the main threat to the royal family isn't terrorism, it's not even these extremists, it's not religious fanaticists or even regimes such as the Taliban who have spoken out against Harry today in response to this tone. It's not even that. It's fanatics, fantasists, those that get fixated on public figures, the parasocial, that have disturbed minds. For example, the young tyke, the young whippersnapper with a disturbed mind that broke into Windsor Castle, luckily, was discovered quickly, but he managed to get onto the grounds with a crossbow. And admits that his mission was to kill the Queen. This isn't the stuff of imagination, of fiction and fantasy. This is real life for the royal families. The royal family have to be on walkabout with the general public all the time. Beggars belief, absolutely beggars belief. Any danger that Harry was in beforehand has multiplied. But much more to the royal family, who don't have the luxury of being able to hide away in their enclave, their Montecito enclave. The Harkles don't have to face the public because they're not working royals. And when they do it, they can shroud it in secrecy, dress it up and private jet it and all the rest of it, this, that and the eighth. Royal family, it's a different kettle of fish, and you're putting them in an extremely untenable, undesirable position. For a son to do that to a father, are you kidding me? With this coronation on the way? Former Royal Marine Ben McBean, Ben McBean, the Royal Marine, was hailed as a hero by Prince Harry himself. He used to be mates with Harry. Harry hailed him a hero. This Ben McBean, I saw him interviewed online. Lovely chap, very decent. Has good things to say about Harry, very, very good things. He lost an arm and a leg in a bomb blast while he was serving. But he tweeted a few days ago, "Love you, Prince Harry." I think this was yesterday. "Love you, Prince Harry, but you need to shut up. You need to shut up. It makes you wonder the people he's hanging around with. If it was good people, somebody by now would have told him to stop." And I saw him interviewed and he said that he was referring to a sort of LA sensibility. And we all know the kind of LA sensibility that he's talking about. These sun drips, these little drips of sunshine, fake and phony. Harry's surrounded himself wantonly and willingly with a sort of sycophantic audience that prop him up. Yes, they bolster him, they make him feel good. The likes of Nachos Figueras or whatever he's called. So, he comes across very reasonable on the Netflix documentary. You want to support him, he's doing the right thing, he's looking after himself, blah, blah, blah. But do they really have his best interests at heart? And if they do, well, they seem very much misguided. But most of these people, not all of them are wealthy of their own accord like Nachos Figueras. Lots of them depend on Harry for their income revenue, such as the therapists and the publishers and the producers. And everybody who's orchestrating this Harkledom, opposing the kingdom, and all the various factions, many of them in America, but all over the place, that are propping them up. That are coaxing Harry into this tome, which seems to be the crest of a wave of propaganda. Harry and Meghan exploit everybody else, but Harry and Meghan are also getting exploited by people who have gotten into their head, driven home some very weird, warped ideas, and it's very sinister. Very sinister. Major Chris Hunter says that Harry betrayed the oath of allegiance. And all this talk about chess pieces in a game, and talking like that publicly dehumanizes the people that Harry killed. He says, Harry shouldn't talk about 9/11 in the way that he did, justifying the killings, because it just didn't sound like the words of any soldier or veteran that this Major Chris Hunter knows. He says it sounded immature, unintelligent, disingenuous, and like it was just written to sell books. That sums it up, really, doesn't it? We all know that this spare wants revenge, but surely this can't be bringing him satisfaction. Surely it can't be bringing him any kind of satisfaction. You know, this guy who was so fidgety, so nervous, so ill at ease in any circumstance, panic attacks all over the place. Do we really think this is going to be soothing for the soul? Do we really think that? Do we really think he's going to be slumbering at night with peace this evening? That he woke up to a peaceful morning with the conjoined palm trees and his wife's legs akimbo, or whatever it is that greets him in the morning with that fairy chalice. The mind boggles, it really does. Colonel Stewart, who was awarded the Distinguished Service Order after 7 tours of Northern Ireland back in the day, said it's rather sad that a man who had all these advantages in life seems so intent on destroying himself and the monarchy. I feel really sad for the king. I have met him a few times, and he was colonel of the regiment. He is a very sensitive, decent man, and this will really be hurting him a great deal, all this furore. And many other veterans have come forward to say that this is unacceptable, he's broken an unwritten rule, and this information should not be shared with civilians. Even I know that, and I know absolutely nothing about the army, the military, the navy, the armed forces, and all the rest of it, apart from, well, you know, a few affairs of the heart, should we put it that way? A few affairs of the heart, an officer, a gentleman, a ladyboy. You know, that kind of thing, my dear. But aside from that, aside from a bit of carnal knowledge, I know nothing about that sort of thing. But, yes, I do know that you don't share that kind of information. I mean, go figure. Who doesn't know it? It is so utterly reckless, so utterly stupid. And a spokesman for the Taliban's police have already come forward to say, Prince Harry will always be remembered. Afghans will never forget the killing of their innocent countrymen. The perpetrators of such crimes will one day be brought to the international court table in front of the international community. So if you were scared before Harry, or fearful, not even just for yourself, but for your family, because these are the type of people that never forget, generation to generation. You know, and this is a different circumstance, but you know, look at the episode involving Salman Rushdie last year. All these years after a fatwa was made against him, there was an attempt to carry it out. You know, there are people out there with long memories, and it's unbelievable. It truly is. Many other voices have been outraged. But this singular revelation, just this singular revelation from that tome, you know, this is the most shocking thing in it, actually. Despite all the other revelations about other members of the royal family and scrapping with Willie and all the rest of it, this is the really shocking one, as far as I'm concerned, because of the horror of the security detail that it implies, the security implications, rather. Absolutely horrific. And anybody reading this and reading about this will fully comprehend his reckless nature, his dreadful judgment, and the sheer stupidity. It is exposing him. It is revealing him. And, you know, it was never my want or wish to sit here on a purple velvet throne and slate that poor young boy that lost his mother at such a young age. Oh, my phone keeps going off. It's so annoying. I'm going to lose battery. Excuse me, dears. That poor boy who I had such sympathy for and still have such sympathy for, you know, in that raw grief, to have to go through what he went through. You know, not in my wildest dreams did I think that I'd have to sit here slating him for his behaviour, because one is compassionate and one has empathy. But you have to understand, my dears, that this guy and his family represent my kingdom, my nation, and I had a deep reverence and respect for the Queen. And to watch her life's work attempt to be dismantled, their attempts to dismantle it, which in many ways are working across the Commonwealth as people reconsider the king as head of state all over the place. Things that may have happened gradually, naturally, at a slower speed over time. And as Charles took the reins, I do accept that, but these things took on a new, faster urgency and speed with calls for reparations and bringing more complications into the mix, much more disparagement towards William and Catherine, sullying their royal tours and the work that they're doing, damaging diplomatic relations. This was all brought on by them and under his behest. So, I can't apologise for holding him accountable to that. He's all for accountability, isn't he? And moreover, it's not just his family that he's damaged, it's this nation. It's this nation whose reputation has taken a severe beating over the past few years. And that is in no short part, and I'm not laying all the blame at their door because much of it lies at our government's door, our successive governments over the past few years and on into decades actually. But much of it does lie at their door, and they're supposed to be, Harry especially, is supposed to be someone that bolsters this nation and improves it. I know he thinks he's on some mission to improve it by making it navel gaze and be introspective into its unconscious bias and this, that and the second. Well, I don't think that's very healthy. Nobody has come close, Harry, to putting your family in more danger than you. Nobody has come close. Not Papa Charles withholding various security arrangements and finances from you. No, you did it all on your own. You've caused an international incident that will be ongoing. Yes, you have. You! King Charles, or Prince Charles as he was then, is painted as an ineffectual father throughout the whole thing. Now, I've got to say that if this is true, that when Diana died, Prince Charles broke the news to Harry at Balmoral. Now, if it's true that Charles wasn't even able to hug Harry when he told him of Diana's death, then I have to say I have an enormous wellspring of sympathy for Harry. Well, I always have in that respect, but to think that he wasn't offered a hug or a tactile moment with his father in that worst moment of his life of raw grief is hard for me to reconcile and come to terms with. Obviously, we only have Harry's recollection. Charles's might be something entirely different. But if we take Harry's word for it, I find that very hard to grapple with. And I understand that Charles came from an undemonstrative family. Philip and Elizabeth aren't known for the warm fuzzies, let's face it. Everybody shows love in different ways. You could say generationally, but then my great-grandparents were just as huggy and tactile as the little babies coming up now in the family. So I don't just put it down to generational or even class. But that's cold. There's something cold in that, or detached. And Charles, Harry tells us, expresses his feeling that he failed Harry on several occasions throughout this. Well, I'm not going to speak on that, but I will say that if he didn't offer his son a hug in the moment he was told of his mum's death, then that was a failing. I don't care about his own personal spirit and character and personality and the way he goes about life. You hug your son when their mother's just died. But we only have Harry's word for this. When he confides about suffering panic attacks as a grown man to Charles, he confides in Charles. Apparently, Charles looked at his plate, sadly, and said, "I failed you, Harry, I failed you." Well, I couldn't quite get the context of this from the excerpt, but I got the feeling that Harry wasn't exactly pleased that that was his response, that he said he'd failed him. But to give Charles the benefit of the doubt in this instance, at least he didn't say, "Well, you failed me, Harry." I mean, remember, this is Harry who wants accountability all the time. Well, he got it. It seems, whenever he asks for an apology, such as on the day of the Queen's death, he gets one a lot of the time. But Charles took accountability for you suffering your panic attacks, Harry. And he didn't say, Harry, you failed me. You see, this is what I think I seem to garner from this, that when Harry hears something like, I failed you, Harry. I'm sorry you get panic attacks. I failed you as a father. What Harry hears in his head is, Harry, you failed me, you know. I failed you, so you failed me. No, he didn't say that you failed him. He took on responsibility and accountability. Charles did, Harry. So, but in your head, it feels like you've turned it into him pushing that failure onto you. It's like you cannot win with this boy. It doesn't matter what you say. And to me, this indicates why William always greets him with a scowl, as we're told in this tone. This scowl that I know so well from William. Maybe it's because the frustration is there because that no words can reach you, Harry. This is why they can't make statements all the time. They can't respond to you with words. They can't speak to you. They've given up having meetings and phone calls because nothing works. They can't win. It doesn't matter if they say, I failed you, or you failed me, or whatever it is, you're going to put your spin on it, the eternal victim. And you met another eternal victim to match you, which has just magnified the whole affair. This is why father and brother are driven to the red mist of rages. My fruits, I'm just popping in to let you know that this discussion will continue in the next broadcast, which will be appearing sooner rather than later. It's just appearing in different segments. So this is the first segment. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll return for the next one. I'll see you soon, and toodles.